The problem will be, because I don't have a ton of trust in their run game either, Robinson and Gibson, and that offensive line, that if they get in games where they say it's back and forth and they can keep the offense somewhat balanced, are they actually able to keep it balanced? Or opposing defense is just going to pin their ears back and go after the young quarterback? And if that's the case, Howell is then forced into more mistakes, and that's how you end up with a 5-win, 6-win team. And also, is Chase Young ever going to be healthy again? Since you brought up the other side of the ball in the defensive line. I mean, when's the last time he practiced, let alone played in a game? He has been conspicuous by his absence for the most part the last year and a half, which flies directly contrary to the first year and a half of his NFL career. If Chase Young could get healthy and look anything like he did his first full calendar year in the NFL, then they've got a chance to really make some things happen. Emmanuel Forbes is having a great camp, their first-round pick. Maybe that's what they need, but to your point, yeah, this is a 6 to 7 win team, and maybe I'm just buying into the vibes, and that's why I'm leaning 7.
That's the tricky part, is that you have to separate the vibes from the games. But you're right. Sometimes a culture change can make all the difference. And when it comes to teams with really great defenses, sometimes you can muck up the game and keep it low scoring. And that's how the Commanders did things. What was it, 2 years ago? I remember that playoff game in which they didn't win against, I believe it was the Bucks, but they did cover the spread. So do you think they'll win some games that way?
Absolutely.
How do you separate the vibes from the actual games won? Because we know vibes are at an all-time high right now in DC. No more Dan Snyder in the mix, but again, vibes do not win football games. So do you have trouble kind of separating those two, or do you think the vibes turn into wins?
It's a great question. So obviously, listen, this all happened kind of so late in the process, guys, in terms of the NFL calendar, that there's no substantive change really on the football side that Josh Harris, Mitchell Rales, Magic Johnson and company are going to be able to make when it comes to, football decision making, whether it's, quarterback, offensive line, coaching staff, scouts, and things like that. Those substantive changes are probably coming after a while of observation. Josh Harris himself even said that. So in terms of wins and losses this year, I don't really see it having much of an impact. I do know the only maybe thing that you're going to see differently are fans actually, happy and excited and enjoying football again. That was robbed from us for basically a quarter of a century by a puny little runt tyrant jackass who I hope Stubbs is still has jock itch every day for the rest of his life. But that was a kind of a godsend now that we have a brand new, fresh beginning, and there's substantive matters, right? In other words, these decisions now aren't just in a vacuum where Dan Snyder's employing a goofball like Bruce Allen or a boob like Vinny Serrato, who was in charge of his football operations for 2+ decades. Now you actually have an opportunity to do something and maybe grow and get back to being the kind of franchise that everybody is proud of following. This year, it's a honeymoon period. I don't see this group being great. I don't see them even being above good or pretty good. If everything works out, you could sort of go to a funhouse mirror, squint sideways, and you could see fine.
How much can he do for them in so much as, can he add a win? Can he add 2 wins to the schedule this year and take the Commanders from being a 6-11 team to an 8-9 team who's maybe in the conversation down to the last week or two?
Yeah, the adding a win part, I think, may be too much to ask for this year one for him. I mean, this is one of those, you mentioned it, there's some talent on this offense. The offensive line stinks, which we'll get to in a second, I'm sure. But Jahan Dotson is a star. He is a rising star in this league. A lot of people don't know yet, but they will. He is a fantastic player. I think a sneaky bet is that he might end up leading this team in catches while Terry McLaurin leads the team in yards. It may not happen, but I think it's capable of it with his versatility on that offense. So McLaurin is already a bona fide Pro Bowler. He is a borderline top 10 receiver in his own right. Curtis Samuel, a fun little gadget player. They're going to use Antonio Gibson, a running back, a fantasy darling, kind of in his real natural role now of pass catcher. They're bullish on a De'Ami Brown renaissance, which I am not. They're bullish on a Logan Thomas, a tight end renaissance, kind of going back to what he was a couple of years ago off some pretty serious injuries and some wear and tear. I am not, but even still, those receivers are good enough where you could, as you said, just flip a bubble screen and end up with 10, 15, 20 yards and some yards after the catch and some exciting playmaker stuff there. But how his weaknesses, the offensive line, I think, is going to be a factor here because the sneaky thing about him, I liked him coming out of North Carolina, by the way. I thought he was underdrafted, not to the point that he's a world beater and a Justin Herbert type player. but he took a ton of sacks at North Carolina. And that's going to be, I think, the major issue for him here. Again, with this bad offensive line, you start getting hit enough, you start seeing the ghost like David Carr did all those years ago. So I think, to me, his job is to kind of keep the thing in neutral and not mess up at this point. And if you just get it to playmakers, get the ball out on time, and don't turn it over a ton, you can end up with some pretty decent totals. I'm not talking about, again, a first-round fantasy draft pick type totals, but not embarrassing quarterback totals.
Do you have an opinion on Anthony Richardson just yet, or do you think it's too early to tell?
No, I think he's going to be the most wildly explosive guy one way or another we've seen in a while. Here's an idea for everyone looking to start. Like, you try to save money, but you always have a hard time getting started. Do yourself a favor. Just find like a pile of change somewhere. Or if you want to get really crazy, dollar bills. Get a pile of dollar bills. And every time you hear someone compare Anthony Richardson to Lamar Jackson, drop a dollar bill in a jar somewhere. And by the end of this season, you will have a college fund for your kids, whether they've been born yet or not, because that's going to happen a million times over this season, is comparing Anthony Richardson to Lamar Jackson. And I think it's going to be similar in that when Lamar Jackson was young, yes, he had that MVP season, but he would also be prone to making explosive mistakes sometimes. Every young quarterback is. And I think that's what we'll get from Richardson. We're going to have moments where we go, oh my God, did you see what Anthony Richardson did? And then 5 minutes later, it's going to be, oh my God, did you see what Anthony Richardson did? I think for Colts fans, if you cannot marry yourself to the idea of competing for a playoff spot this year, like if you look at that, nobody wants to look at their team competing as secondary, but if you can just look at it as Anthony Richardson's growth is the primary focus of this season, I think you're going to have a whole hell of a lot of fun as a Colts fan this year, because you're going to see those moments, like you said, where he drops a dime into the corner of the end zone, whether it's caught or not is another thing, but he drops a dime into the corner of the end zone, or breaks contain on a third down and scrambles for 16 yards on 3rd and 14. Those kind of moments are going to happen, and I think for Colts fans, you should be happy that they've decided that your first-round quarterback is going to start right out of the gate, because you get more of it. Aaron Rodgers actually liking Hard Knocks being there was actually probably like minus 150 on the board, because seriously, Aaron Rodgers enjoying people paying attention to him in any form or function, Lucy. I mean, he complained as much as he could leading up to it, but then as soon as he saw that first camera, I'm sure his eyes lit up like diamonds.
Exactly. And when he realized that this would be basically the Aaron Rodgers show, because they know that's what people want. Of course it is. They want people interacting with Aaron Rodgers. They want Aaron Rodgers talking, doing anything. B-roll of Aaron Rodgers is what they want. He knows that. And now he sees that, oh, no, it's not a distraction. And that's what we thought. As soon as he said, they're shoving it down our throats. Like, no, he's trying to be one of those girls, Chelsa, who's like, oh, I'm not that materialistic. And yeah, I'm just, I don't really know any labels, or like I don't even know what makeup I wear. I just get out of bed and this is what I am, and that's not the case. So I think that's what Aaron Rodgers tries to be, just a humble girl, I'm just living my life, and whatever happens, it's blessings. No, he really cares a lot about what people think of him and people watching him, and he is eating this up. He said he's never been happier. He's in New York. He loves it. It's much better than Green Bay. Yeah, because look at the life he gets to live, where he is photographed at every event. He is on, his whole preseason is on TV. So I think this is a perfect situation for Aaron Rodgers.